The night my sister called me from the emergency room floor, barely able to breathe, begging me to come, I had a choice to make. And I want you to know something before I tell you what I did. I had been that floor before. I had been that desperate before. I had reached out like that before. And the people who were supposed to love me most had looked me dead in the eye and chosen her anyway. So when my phone lit up with her name at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, 5 years after she destroyed my life with a lie so vicious it still makes my stomach turn to think about it, I sat there, letting it ring, and I felt absolutely nothing. This is the story of how I got there. My name is Jennifer Calloway, and I grew up believing I was the luckiest girl alive. That sounds dramatic now, looking back. But I genuinely thought that. I had parents who seemed to adore me. A house with a real backyard in a neighborhood where kids still played outside until the streetlights came on. I had a sister named Cassidy, 2 years younger than me, with my mother's green eyes and my father's easy charm. And I thought the sun rose and set with her. I know how that sounds given everything that came after. But I want you to understand who I was before all of this, because it matters. I wasn't naive or stupid. I was just good. I believed in people. I believed in family. I believed that the bonds you're born into are sacred, that blood means something, that if you love people hard enough and loyally enough, they'll love you back the same way. That belief almost killed me. Growing up, Cassidy and I were different in every way that counted. I was the studious one, the one who colored inside the lines, the one who woke up early to help mom with breakfast and stayed up late to finish homework nobody asked me to complete. I wanted to be an architect. I had binders full of sketches by the time I was 15, floor plans, elevations, little dream houses I drew during study hall. My parents called it my little hobby and smiled like it was cute. Cassidy wanted to be an influencer at 16, and they thought that was a completely reasonable life plan. I don't want you to think I resented my sister. I didn't. Not then. I thought she was brilliant in ways I wasn't, magnetic and funny, the kind of person who walked into a room and made it brighter just by existing. She had this laugh that made everyone around her laugh too. I used to feel proud when people said we were sisters. I used to think, yeah, she's mine. She belongs to me and I to her. The first cracks appeared when I was 17 and Cassidy was 15. Our parents had always had what I'd call a very particular kind of love. The kind that expressed itself through things. Gifts, gestures, material proof of affection. And I'd always noticed, in the back of my mind I'd always noticed, that the gestures flowed a little more freely toward Cassidy. A little more often. A little more lavishly. I told myself it was because she was younger, or because she was funnier, or because I was fine and Cassidy needed more reassurance. I had a talent for finding explanations that let me keep loving everyone. My dad, Richard, was a commercial real estate developer. Not obscenely wealthy, but comfortable. Very comfortable. The kind of comfortable that comes with private school tuition and annual vacations to places that require passports and a kitchen that gets fully renovated every time my mother, Diane, changes her aesthetic preferences. Mom didn't work outside the house. She lunched, she volunteered at things, she decorated, she maintained. She was the curator of our family's image, and she was exceptional at it. And the image she curated was one where Cassidy was the jewel. I say that now and I can hear how bitter it sounds. But I'm not being bitter. I'm being accurate. There's a difference. I spent a long time confusing the two, and I refused to do it anymore. The summer before my senior year of high school, I got accepted into a prestigious architecture summer program at the State University. Competitive. Selective. Only 20 students in the country. I had applied on my own, written my own essays, submitted my portfolio without telling anyone because I didn't want to jinx it. When the acceptance letter came, I printed it out and brought it downstairs for dinner, vibrating with the kind of happiness that feels too big for your body to hold. My dad looked at it for about 4 seconds. That's great, Jen. What's it going to cost? My mother asked if it would interfere with our family vacation to Sardinia. It would. I'd have to skip the last 5 days. They said no. Cassidy said from across the dinner table without looking up from her phone. That's really sad, Jen. But Sardinia is going to be incredible. You'll have so much fun. I sat there with that printed letter in my hand and felt the first real crack open up somewhere in my chest. Not anger. Not even hurt, exactly. Just recognition. The quiet, terrible recognition of what I actually was in this family. I went anyway. I lied and said I was staying at a friend's house for part of the summer, and I went. I paid for it with money I'd saved from babysitting and tutoring over 2 years. I gave up Sardinia, and my parents were cold toward me for 3 weeks afterward, and I didn't care. I went, and I learned, and I came back knowing more certainly than ever that architecture was what I was born to do. That program was where I met Marcus Webb. Marcus was from a different world than mine. Raised in a small town in Tennessee by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to give him every opportunity she could scrape together. He was there on a full scholarship. He was 20, a junior at the program's host university, working as a teaching assistant to earn extra money. He had dark eyes and a slow smile, and hands that moved when he explained things, like his whole body was in conversation with whatever idea he was working through. I fell in love with him over the course of 6 weeks in a way that felt less like falling and more like arriving somewhere I'd always been headed. We were careful. We were appropriate. He was a TA. I was a student. We waited until the program ended before we had our first real date. We talked on the phone every night for 2 months before anything happened. We were so careful. I brought him home to meet my family at Thanksgiving, 3 months after the program ended. I was 18 by then, a freshman at the state university myself, and Marcus was 21, a senior, about to graduate. I was terrified and excited and so proud of him. He'd gotten a job offer from a prestigious firm in the city. He was brilliant and kind and funny and good. My family was polite at dinner. Distant but polite. Afterward, when Marcus had gone back to his car, my mother found me in the kitchen. "He seems nice," she said. "He's wonderful," I said. "He's a little old for you." "He's 3 years older than me, Mom." She picked up a dish and dried it. "He doesn't really fit, Jennifer. You know that, right? Our world isn't his world." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because something in me understood for the first time that my mother had very specific ideas about what I was supposed to be and who I was supposed to be with, and Marcus Webb from Kingsport, Tennessee didn't fit the picture. I chose him anyway. Of course I did. 1.5 years passed. Good years. The best years of my life up to that point. Marcus and I were solid. Real. The kind of relationship where you're not performing love, you're just living it, quietly, consistently, in small gestures and steady presence. He was working at his firm. I was deep into my architecture program, excelling, beginning to build the portfolio that I hoped would launch my career. We had an apartment together, just a small one, but it was ours. I had plants on the windowsill, and his coffee mug next to mine in the cabinet, and a wall I'd hung with architectural prints. My family tolerated Marcus. My parents had never warmed to him, but they were civil enough at family dinners that I could tell myself things were fine. Cassidy had, over that 1.5 years, started spending more time in the city. She'd gotten a part-time job at a boutique, ostensibly pursuing her social media dreams, and she'd visit my apartment sometimes, raid my closet, eat my food, and drain my energy in that particular Cassidy way that I'd always found exhausting and endearing in equal measure. I didn't notice her noticing Marcus until it was too late. Or maybe I did notice, somewhere in the part of me that had learned to file away things that hurt and come back to them later. The way she laughed at his jokes a little too long. The way she found reasons to touch his arm. The way she dressed differently when she knew he'd be there. I filed it away. I told myself I was imagining things because I'd grown up watching my parents favor her, and now I was projecting. I told myself she was my sister, and she would never. I told myself I was the problem. I was so desperate not to be the problem. 3 weeks before my 20th birthday, everything collapsed. I came home from a late class to find my mother sitting in my apartment. She'd used the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. She was sitting at my kitchen table with her hands folded, and her face was the face she made when she'd already decided something and just needed to perform the announcement. "We need to talk about Marcus," she said. I set my bag down. My heart started that slow, sickening drop. "What about him?" "Cassidy came to us." My mother's voice was carefully neutral. The practiced neutral of someone who has rehearsed. She told us what's been happening. What's been happening? I repeated. Jennifer. My mother looked at me. Cassidy told us that Marcus has been pursuing her. For months. She has messages. She has proof. The floor felt like it tilted. That's not possible, I said. She's been afraid to tell you. She didn't want to hurt you. But she can't keep watching this happen. That is not possible, I said again louder. Marcus would never. She has screenshots, Jennifer. I don't know how long I stood there. At some point my father appeared. He must have been there the whole time, waiting, because my mother didn't handle confrontations alone. He stood in my living room with his arms crossed, and his face set in that particular expression that meant the verdict was already in, and the trial was a formality. I think you need to take some time, he said. Step back. Be realistic about this relationship. Where is Cassidy? I asked. I want to talk to her. She's upset. She doesn't want to be in the middle of this. She put herself in the middle of this. Jennifer. My mother's voice sharpened. Your sister is trying to protect you. I asked to see the screenshots. My mother showed me her phone. There were messages. Messages that looked like they were from Marcus, talking to my sister in ways that made my stomach heave. Sweet things. Flirtatious things. Things a man in a relationship doesn't say to his girlfriend's sister. But something was wrong with them. I couldn't articulate it in the moment. I was too shattered, too disoriented. But something was wrong. The syntax was slightly off. The voice was close to Marcus, but not quite. Like a copy made from a copy. I called Marcus that night. He answered on the second ring. Your family called me, he said, and his voice was raw. Jen, I swear to God. Tell me the truth, I said. I have never sent your sister a single message that wasn't completely appropriate. I barely know her. I barely talk to her. Jen, someone made those up. Someone fabricated those. I believed him. I want you to know that. I believed him. Not because I was blindly devoted, but because I knew this man. I knew the architecture of who he was, and what I'd seen on that phone didn't fit. But knowing the truth and being able to prove the truth are two very different things. Cassidy, when I finally got her on the phone, cried immediately, performed devastation so convincingly that I almost second-guessed myself. She said she was sorry, she hadn't wanted to hurt me, she'd tried to ignore it, she'd been so scared. She cried and she shook and she did the things she'd always done. She made herself so pitiful that the entire focus of any room shifted to her pain and away from whatever she'd actually done. My parents fully and completely believed her. Of course they did. They'd always believed her. She was the jewel. What followed was the worst month of my life. Up to that point. My parents pressured me relentlessly to end things with Marcus. They showed up at my apartment unannounced. They called me multiple times a day. They enlisted family friends, even a therapist they hired who had only heard Cassidy's version, to talk me through what they called my denial. Marcus, to his credit, tried everything. He offered to take a polygraph. He paid a tech friend to analyze the metadata of the screenshots, and what that friend found was damning. The messages had been created in a third-party app designed to generate fake text message screenshots. The timestamps didn't match any actual communication between his number and Cassidy's. He compiled everything into a document and sent it to my parents. My father called it something Marcus made up to cover his tracks. My mother cried and said she couldn't believe I would take a man's word over my own sister's. The moment I understood there was no version of this where they believed me was the moment something in me permanently changed. It wasn't dramatic. It was very quiet, like a door closing, like a light going off in a room. They escalated. My father informed me, matter-of-factly over a phone call, that if I continued the relationship with Marcus, he would no longer be paying my tuition. I had 1 year left in my program. 1 year. I was 20 years old with no savings, no income, and no way to finish what I'd worked my entire life to build if I lost that tuition. I told him I needed time to think. I went home for what I told myself was going to be a conversation. A real one. I walked into that house and I sat at the dinner table where I'd grown up, and I looked at my parents and my sister, and I asked Cassidy one more time, point blank, to her face, with no witnesses except our parents, to tell the truth. She looked me right in the eye. And she lied. She lied so smoothly, so tearfully, so completely, that I felt the world tilt again. Not because I believed her, but because I understood, finally and fully, that it didn't matter whether I believed her. She had decided on a reality, and the people I'd loved my whole life had decided to live in it with her. Marcus and I broke up 3 days later. Not because I stopped loving him or believing him, but because he was about to start his career, and the campaign my parents were running against him, calling his firm with concerns, reaching out to mutual connections, was threatening to derail everything he'd worked for. He had a mother in Tennessee who'd given everything for him. I couldn't let my family's war destroy his future too. It was the most devastating decision I'd ever made. I went back to school. I finished my degree. I didn't go home for holidays. I got a part-time job and took out loans to cover what my father rescinded. And I graduated on a Tuesday in May with no family in the audience and a diploma I'd paid for with my own hands. I thought I was surviving. I didn't know the worst part was still coming. Here is what the 5 years after looked like, in brief. I moved to a city 3 states away. I got entry-level job at an architecture firm. Not the kind of firm I dreamed of, but a real one, with real projects, real clients, and real opportunity if I worked hard enough. I worked hard enough. I worked harder than anyone else there. I worked like someone who had been told her dreams were a hobby and needed to prove, every single day, to no one but herself, that they were wrong. I dated a little. Nothing serious. The damage from Marcus, from how it ended, from what it meant, sat inside me like a stone I hadn't figured out how to put down yet. I made friends. A woman named Priya from my firm, who made me laugh for the first time in what felt like years. A neighbor named Caleb who left soup outside my door when I was sick and never made a big deal of it. Slowly, I built something that resembled a life. I did not speak to my parents. I did not speak to Cassidy. The occasional text from my mother, usually around birthdays or Christmas. Thinking of you, hope you're well, I left on read. Not out of spite, out of self-preservation. I had learned, finally, that I could not afford to keep reaching into that fire expecting it to be warm. What I didn't know, because no one told me, was what was happening back home. Cassidy had, in the 2 years after my departure, managed to build a moderately successful social media presence. She'd leveraged my parents' money, because of course she had, into an aesthetically curated life that photographed beautifully. She was an influencer now, as she'd always wanted to be. Products, partnerships, brand deals. The life she'd always wanted, built partly on the rubble of mine. And Marcus. I didn't know this for 3 years. But Marcus had stayed in the city, had risen quickly at his firm, had apparently been completely cleared of any allegations when the metadata evidence circulated among enough mutual connections that the truth had become unignorable to everyone except my family. He hadn't come looking for me. I understood why. I had made a choice, and choices have consequences. I had chosen to protect his future and walked away, and you can't do that to a person and then expect them to keep the door open. I didn't blame him. I missed him every day for 4 years, and then one morning I woke up and I didn't. And I counted that as its own kind of healing. What I'm telling you all of this to explain is that I built a real life. Quietly, stubbornly, entirely on my own. By year 4, I was a project manager. By year 5, I was being considered for associate. I had a good apartment with good light and plants that I did not kill, and a bookshelf full of architecture texts and novels, and a life that was mine, fully mine. In a way my life had never been when I was living inside my family's story. And then my phone rang at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. The name on the screen was Cassidy. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough to watch it stop ringing and go to voicemail. Then it rang again. I sent it to voicemail again. A text came through. Jen, please. I'm in the ER. I'm alone. I'm scared. Please. I sat in the dark in my apartment, and I thought about a lot of things. I thought about the dinner table where I'd handed her the chance to tell the truth, and she hadn't taken it. I thought about the look on Marcus's face when he said, I have never sent your sister a single message. The rawness of it, the desperation of being accused of something you didn't do. I thought about my mother's voice. Your sister is trying to protect you. And then, because I am who I am, because whatever else my family did to me, they didn't make me someone who lets people die on a floor. I called her back. Cassidy. What happened? She was crying. Really crying, not performance crying. I'd spent enough years studying the difference to know. Her voice was thin and frightened, and she sounded small. I think it's my heart, she said. I've been having chest pains for days, and I didn't want to. I didn't go, and now I can't breathe, and I'm in the ER, and Mom and Dad are in Europe for their anniversary, and I don't know. I tried everyone, Jen. I'm so sorry. I know I have no right to call you. Give me the name of the hospital, I said. She gave it to me. It was in our hometown. A 4-hour drive. I sat in the dark for another minute. Then I got up, put on clothes, got in my car, and drove. I'm not going to tell you I did it out of goodness. I don't know what I did it out of. Maybe something deeper than goodness, something older, more instinctive. Maybe just the bone-deep inability to leave someone alone and scared in a hospital room. Even someone who had dismantled my life with their hands. I drove 4 hours in the November dark, and I walked into that ER at 6 in the morning. Cassidy was in a curtained bay, wired to a monitor, looking like she'd shrunk. She was 27 years old, and she looked 17 and terrified. When she saw me, she started crying again. You came, she said. I didn't. I wasn't sure you would. What did the doctors say? Supraventricular tachycardia. My heart was doing. They called it an episode. They got it under control. I need a procedure, they said. Maybe next week. Okay. I sat down in the plastic chair beside her bed. I'll stay until you're stable. She looked at me for a long time. She looked at me like she was trying to find the catch. Like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for me to pull back what I'd offered. I just looked at her back. Jen, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. And I want to be very honest with you right now. Part of me wanted to stop her. Part of me had built something, a clean, structured, manageable life, on top of what had happened, and I was not entirely sure I was ready to dig back down to the foundation. But I said, okay, and she told me everything. It started before the program, before Marcus, before any of it. Cassidy had known, from the time she was 15 or 16, that she was the favorite. She'd known it not the way I'd known it, suspecting, rationalizing, filing away, but fully and consciously known it. Had understood that her parents' love was, in some essential way, conditional on her remaining the jewel, the shining one, the chosen one. And then you went to that program, Cassidy said, lying in that hospital bed, and you came back different, confident. You had Marcus, and you had this whole world forming around you that I couldn't touch and couldn't compete with, and Mom and Dad started. They started looking at you differently, like maybe they'd underestimated you. And I felt. She stopped. What? I said. Terrified, she said. Which is pathetic. I know it's pathetic. I felt terrified that they were going to love you more. That you were going to take them from me. I didn't say anything. And so she swallowed. I made up the screenshots. It wasn't hard. There's an app. I'd seen it used for drama on social media. I tested it for like a day before I went to Mom, and I went to Mom because I knew she'd believe me. I knew she wanted to believe me. And once she believed me, Dad would too. And then you'd lose Marcus, and you'd have to come home, and things would go back to being. What? I asked. What would they go back to being? She looked at me with tears running down her face. Safe, she whispered. For me. The room was very quiet for a very long time. I have thought a lot, since that night, about what I felt in that moment. People expect rage, I think. People expect the confrontation to be explosive, the catharsis to be operatic. But what I felt was something closer to the opposite of surprise. What I felt was the odd, terrible peace of having something confirmed that some part of me had always known. She had done it because she was afraid. She had watched me build something real, and she had been afraid it would cost her the only validation she knew how to receive. And so she burned mine down. Did Mom and Dad know? I asked. After? Did they ever figure it out? Cassidy was quiet for too long. Cassidy. I told Mom, she said. 2 years after. I couldn't. I felt guilty. I told her. I showed her how I'd done it. The air went out of me. And she said, my voice was very steady. I was proud of how steady it was. Cassidy closed her eyes. She said it was better if we didn't open that back up, that you'd moved on, that Marcus was gone, that it would only cause more pain. More pain for who? And she didn't answer. But she didn't have to. My mother had known for 3 years. For 3 years, she had known what her younger daughter had done, had known that her older daughter had been lied about and abandoned and financially coerced out of a relationship and partially out of her education. And she had decided that the story they'd built was worth more than the truth. I sat in that plastic chair in that ER bay at 6:30 in the morning, and I made some decisions. I stayed with Cassidy through the morning, made sure she was stable, made sure she had a follow-up appointment scheduled, a plan for the procedure, someone from her friend group who could take her home. I did all of it. Not for her. Not really. For the version of me that was not going to become someone who left sick people in hospital hallways, regardless of what they'd done. When her friend arrived at noon and Cassidy reached for my hand, I let her hold it for exactly 1 moment. "Thank you," she said. "I'm going to need you to do something," I said. She blinked. "I need you to tell Dad. On the phone today from this bed. I need you to call him in Europe and tell him exactly what you told me. All of it. And I need you to tell him that Mom already knew." Her face went white. "Jen, that's my price for staying today," I said. "I don't want money. I don't want a public apology. I don't want drama. I want the people who decided the lie was more important than me to know that I know." She called him. I sat 3 feet away, and I listened to my father's voice on speakerphone as Cassidy unraveled 5 years of fiction in 10 minutes. The silence on his end was very long. "Richard," I said, because I'd started calling him that in my head years ago and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. "I'm here. I heard everything." His voice, when it came back, was altered. Something in it was different. Smaller. "Jennifer, I'm not calling to fight," I said. "I'm calling to let you know that I know, and that I'm done waiting for an apology that would fix anything, because nothing is going to fix it. You can sit with that for however long you need to." I left before he could respond. Left Cassidy with her friend, walked out of that hospital into the November air, sat in my car, and let myself shake for about 10 minutes. Just shake. Not cry, not yell, just shake like my body was releasing 5 years of held tension through my hands. Then I drove home. What I didn't expect was Marcus. 3 weeks after the hospital, I got a message from a mutual connection. Someone from the summer program who'd stayed in touch with both of us in a peripheral way. She said she'd heard what happened, that the truth had finally come out through family channels, the way truths sometimes do. Cassidy, apparently, had not been able to stop it telling my father. The guilt, once started, was an avalanche. She'd told her friends. Her friends had talked. The story had traveled. "Marcus," she said, "would like to talk to me. If I was open to it. No pressure. No expectation." I sat with that message for 5 days. I want to be really honest about something. I was terrified. Not of Marcus. Of what it would mean to walk back into any part of that time. I had spent 5 years building a careful, contained life that did not depend on the people who'd hurt me, and opening any door to that past felt like a structural risk, like removing a load-bearing wall. On the 5th day, I sent him a message that said, "Yes, we met for coffee." He looked different and exactly the same. The slow smile was still there. The hands that moved when he talked. He'd made partner at his firm. He looked like someone who had been to hard places and come back knowing himself better for it. We talked for 4 hours. We talked about what happened and what it cost us and what we'd built in the years after and who we were now. We talked without agenda or performance. We talked the way 2 people talk when they've already lost each other once and survived it and have no interest in pretending. "I want you to know something," he said near the end. "I never doubted you. After. I knew you believed me. I knew why you made the choice you made." "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I made it." "I know," he said. "But I think I understand it. And I think we're different people now than we were then." "We are," I said. "I'd like to find out who those people are," he said. "If you'd be interested in that." I thought about what it had cost me to protect him. I thought about the 4-hour drive in the November dark. I thought about my sister's voice saying terrified, and my mother's silence, and the way my father's voice had gone small on the phone. "I think I would," I said. "My parents came to see me in the spring. Both of them. Together. They drove 3 states without telling me they were coming, which, honestly, was very on brand. I let them into my apartment because I am not someone who turns people away from doors. I made coffee and I sat across from them and I waited. My father talked first, which surprised me. He's not usually the one who talks. He said he'd been wrong. He said the word wrong several times, actually like he was practicing it, like he was making himself say it enough times that it would stick. He said he'd known somewhere that the story never fully added up, and he'd let himself believe it anyway because it was easier, because Cassidy needed protecting, because he hadn't wanted to look at what his partiality had cost me. My mother cried. She said she was sorry she'd kept quiet after Cassidy told her. She said she'd thought she was protecting the family. She used the word family like it was a separate organism that required sacrifice, and I wanted to ask her, whose sacrifice? Always whose sacrifice? But I didn't, because the honest truth is that I'm not interested in settling scores with people who are already diminished by what they've done. I'm not interested in the performance of their guilt. I've spent enough years inside other people's performances. I said to them, "One, forgive you, because I am someone who needs to live without the weight of this. That forgiveness is mine. It does not mean we go back to what we were. It does not mean I trust you. It means I am putting this down, and I am walking forward, and you can walk forward too, and we'll see what's possible when neither of us is lying about what happened." My mother looked like she wanted more than that. She looked like she wanted the old Jennifer, the one who colored inside the lines and made breakfast and filed away her hurt and kept loving people who didn't love her back in equal measure. That Jennifer is gone. I don't say that with grief. I say it the way you talk about a version of yourself you've outgrown. Cassidy had her procedure. She's fine. We are not close. We are something more honest than close. We are 2 people who know the truth about each other and are finding out slowly what that means. She is in therapy. She is working on something I cautiously believe might be the first genuinely honest version of herself she's ever tried to build. I root for that. I mean it sincerely. Not for her sake. For the sake of whoever she's going to be in the world. Marcus and I are taking it slow. Very slow. We live in different cities still, but the same distance that felt permanent 5 years ago feels navigable now. We talk every day. We're learning each other again, or maybe for the first time. Really for the first time, without the shadow of my family's story over everything. Last week he sent me a photo of a building under construction, a project his firm is managing. He'd drawn little arrows all over it, annotating things he knew I'd notice, things he knew I'd have opinions about. Structural decisions, material choices, the line of the facade. I looked at that picture for a long time, and I thought, this is what I almost didn't get. This ordinary, specific, real thing. This person who knows what I notice. This life that belongs entirely to me. My parents chose her lies over my life. For 5 years, I lived in the wreckage of that. But here's what I've come to know, sitting on the other side. The truth doesn't stay buried. It finds exits. It finds cracks in the foundation, and it works its way out slowly, stubbornly, the way water finds its way through stone. You cannot build a family on a lie and expect the structure to hold. It will fail. Maybe slowly, maybe quietly, maybe not in the way you expect, but it will fail. And the person the lie was designed to destroy, she'll still be standing. I should know. I'm her. If you made it this far, you already know what this story is really about. It's not about revenge, not really. It's about what happens when you stop needing the people who hurt you to finally admit they were wrong before you can move forward. Jennifer didn't need her family's confession to build her life. She built it anyway. The confession just confirmed what she already knew. Drop in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and keeping the peace with family? I want to hear from you. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it. And if you're new here, subscribe, because we tell the kinds of stories that feel true even when they're not. I'll see you in the next one.